All right, we are going to do the entire Pomodoro episode in a single Pomodoro. At the end, it will cut off completely whether we've said everything we want to say or not. Mike, please explain what Pomodoro is.
All right, so for anyone who has somehow missed this or doesn't know, the Pomodoro technique is a form of time boxing, which is a really simple concept. I assume it's been around forever. Basically, you pick a thing that you want to do. You're going to work on some side project, whatever it is, play guitar, and then you set a timer for some amount of time. And then during that chunk of time, that is all you do. You don't stop. You don't start working on something else. You don't take a break. You don't start questioning whether this was the right thing to do or whether your life is going in the right direction or whether you're too old to be getting good at guitar or anything like that. All those existential things just don't happen during that chunk of time. You just focus on the thing. And then when the timer goes off, and this is a key point too, you stop and you take a break and you step away from the thing that you are working on. The Pomodoro technique is just a specific version of time boxing where you're supposed to do 25 minutes specifically working on something. You do 25 minutes of working on the thing, you take a 5-minute break, you do 4 of those in a row, so 4 Pomodoros, and then you take a longer break, like 20 or 30 minutes. It's called Pomodoro because the guy who made it up was using an Italian kitchen timer. Pomodoro is the Italian word for tomato, and for whatever reason, I guess in Italy, they like to make their timers tomatoes. So it's the tomato technique. It just sounds cooler in Italian. 25 minutes, and you do these little cycles. So that's the technique. Again, I think everybody knows what it is. If you haven't, weird. I don't know how you dodge that. But so I'm a huge fan of this technique. I use it a lot. But I also acknowledge that it's just a made up thing that somebody did. So, and I'm pretty hesitant to just jump on board somebody's made up system. And I think a lot of people object to the Pomodoro technique kind of on those grounds of, okay, why do I need a timer? Why do I need to follow this kind of weird system that somebody made up? But before we get into that, we actually spent the last week being really religious about doing the Pomodoro technique and kind of doing a little bit of, okay, let's focus on this for this week so we can talk about it.
But we have been doing this off and on for years.
Both of us, yes. Yeah, we're longtime practicers, or we've done this a lot. What problems are we trying to solve? What happens if you just go about your day without setting silly timers and doing all this stuff? Why not just take breaks when you feel like it? What are we trying to fix? What do you notice happening if you don't do the Pomodoro technique throughout your day?
So if you forget about timers, the thing that's making the decision on what you work on, when you work on it, is really kind of based on emotion, how you feel. So if you feel like doing something, even if you have like strong willpower, okay?
Sure.
But if you feel like working on something, then you'll go work on it. And maybe you can focus on it for hours on end. But as soon as you don't feel like working on it, you'll stop working on it, which could work out really well, or it could go horribly wrong. I've noticed that a lot of times, I don't know, we all have this obsession with trying to have like this perfect quality of focus where when you focus on something, you're 100% focused and, you're just, I don't know, reach this nirvana of just perfect focus.
Yeah.
Or flow state, or people are obsessed with flow state. And we're always trying to get to that. But what's even more important is that you're focusing on the right thing at the right time. And what happens when you get completely submerged and focused on something is you lose that decision making and that ability to back up and see the bigger picture and check yourself and make sure that you're focusing on the right thing. So if you are relying on how you feel and how well you focus in the moment, you're relying on that to be the decider on what you're doing, then you can run into some real issues where you end up focusing on the wrong thing for possibly hours on end, and then you're totally burned out by the end of that, and you have wasted your day or week on something that, even though you focused really well, wasn't that important.
I feel like you just quickly summarized many of the specific problems that you get that we're trying to solve by doing something like this. And that totally lines up with my experience. So just to break that down a little bit, one of the problems that I find needs to be solved, and I think everybody kind of gets this about the Pomodoro technique, is that you need to be able to focus. We're almost too obsessed with focusing. But we all know that if you have something that you're trying to do and you can't get focused, that's not great. And I find that this happens usually at the beginning of the day, or when I'm just starting out on something. So when I wake up, assuming that most things went right, I've slept well, and I'm not, super messed up from the night before or anything. When I wake up, I'm in what I would call diffuse mode, or my brain is in diffuse mode, where I'm kind of seeing everything. I'm fairly relaxed. I'm seeing the big picture. I get my morning routine done. I start work, and I sort of check my email, and I check Slack, and I just kind of get this overview of what I got to do, and I look at my to-do list and see what else is showing up. But I'm in this very high level mode. But then I have some task that I need to work on, and I know that in order to get that done, I need to be able to get out of diffuse mode and get dialed down into focus mode. And what will go wrong pretty often if I'm not doing a time boxing technique, if I'm just saying, okay, start the day, I just have trouble getting into that mode. I just can't get focused, where I keep getting distracted. I keep jumping around. And like you said, if you aren't being very intentional about it, you tend to be pretty driven by emotion, where you just, I feel like I want to check Slack now, or I feel like I want to check the news, or I feel like I want to do this.
You go by what's most urgent. So even if you feel like really ready to work, you might start doing the dishes for an hour, or
Yeah.
or cleaning for an hour or something, when really you have all this much more important work to do.
Right. Your emotions are kind of steering where your attention goes, not your cold, calculated, this is the most relevant, important thing for me to do today, and this is what I need to focus on. So Pomodoro technique, or any time boxing technique, kind of forces you there, where you say, all right, I'm going to work on this thing for 25 minutes, and then you set the timer, and if you're 8 minutes into it and you start feeling like, you know what, I really want to go check Slack right now, you just don't do that, and you stay working on this thing. And to me, that is a fantastic thing. I think whether you use Pomodoro technique or not, that is a thing that you need. You need to be able to go from diffuse mode into focus mode. And it is generally an uncomfortable thing to do. Like, it just tend to not, it's like you're a boulder and you don't want to move. Your mind likes being here in this diffuse mode. It doesn't want to get into focus mode. So being intentional about that and being able to say, okay, I'm going to go through this somewhat uncomfortable process of going from diffuse mode into focus mode, that's a really, really valuable part of time boxing. But like I said, I think everyone kind of gets that. That's not, to me, there's more subtle things that are really valuable about the Pomodoro technique besides that one. So you had mentioned like focus mode as being not necessarily always good, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you, I think I've probably said this before, but if your brain is a sniper rifle, right? You have maybe 3 bullets for the day, okay? Yeah. Like, it doesn't matter if you feel great and you pull the trigger really well, if you aren't aimed perfectly at the target that you're trying to hit, like, it really doesn't matter. Like, it's a great shot, but it doesn't mean anything. So you have to be able to step back and sort of take this, like, your diffuse mode, this higher brain mode where you're thinking about the big picture, you know, the target you're trying to hit, like the really important things. You have to think about that frequently, or be able to think about that frequently before you go in and, you know, go into high precision mode and take that shot, or focus for a really long amount of time. So if you If you choose the wrong thing, focus for a really long amount of time on slightly the wrong thing, then you have missed your mark and screwed everything up.
I do this all the time. I like that metaphor of a shot with a sniper rifle where I start out the day with good intentions and then I kind of let my emotions steer me towards something, and then I think, man, maybe I could write a script that figures out who's the top Twitch streamer at the moment and notifies me on my watch if it's somebody I care about. It's some stupid thing that doesn't have anything to do with anything, but I get really focused on this thing, and then it's like I can't come up for air, and I'm just working on this problem that I'm obsessed with, and then I get done hours later and go, wow, that was super pointless. That I don't know why I did that.
Yeah.
It's like you took your shot, you lined it up, but it's just the wrong thing. So that, to me, that's one of the more subtle things about the Pomodoro technique that I think is super valuable, in that it separates out this idea of being in focus mode, where pretty much by definition, when you're very focused, you aren't seeing the big picture. You don't have this broad view of everything. You aren't supposed to be making judgment calls, and you kind of can't. You're focused on one particular thing. And the Pomodoro technique separates that out, where you say, I'm going to do this very focused mode on this thing that I've decided to do beforehand when I was in diffuse mode. So hopefully it's the right thing. Hopefully I'm able to make good judgment calls in diffuse mode. But I'm going to focus on that, and then I'm going to stop after 25 minutes, and I'm going to get back into diffuse mode where I can see the bigger picture and think a little bit more about, what I ought to be doing or how I ought to spend my day and what's the most valuable thing. But separating those two things out is really key. One, because you don't want those judgment calls distracting you when you're focused. I mean, the point of focused mode is that you're focused. You aren't questioning whether you're doing the right thing. You don't, try to make this judgment call of, oh, I should be doing this or doing that. You're just focused. And then when you're in judgment mode or diffuse mode, you're just there and you aren't fixated on one particular thing either.
Another cool thing that Pomodoro does is it forces you to think about all the stuff you have to do in terms of how much time it takes.
Yeah.
And you get good at judging how long it takes you to do certain things. And you also get good at, or you just become more aware of how you actually think and focus. So what I'll do when I'm planning out a day, usually I start, if I'm going full Pomodoro for the day, I will start with like 15 minutes of planning my day in that diffuse mode, thinking about the big picture. Mm-hmm. And then I just sort of write out on a list in order what the Pomodoros are going to be. And I've learned that I shouldn't really put more, if I have the choice, I shouldn't put more than 2 or 3 in a row of the same subject. Because if I go longer than that, I run the risk of becoming too focused on it, and I can't back out, even with the breaks. It's like, it's too hard. So I try to keep myself moving into different subjects, and then, maybe put another one, like if I had 2 in a row, then I'll do a bunch of other stuff and then go back to that thing later in the day. So I also sort of break up the subjects that way.
It's going to be so hard to try and fully talk about Pomodoro technique in 25 minutes. I've tried to come up with specific names for these things, but I've experienced many of the same things. So the inability to get focused, I call that goldfish brain, where you just keep getting distracted, right? That's part of what this technique is supposed to solve, which is just kind of, you're just being intentional of saying, I'm going to try to get myself to go from diffuse to focus mode.
I think, one of the biggest benefits to Pomodoro is that it forces you to make a decision about the subject matter that you're going to focus on and the time frame that you're going to focus on. You no longer have to worry about that when you're in a Pomodoro.
So, okay.
And I think that's so important. Oops, sorry.
Yeah. So there's goldfish brain, or goldfish mode, where you can't get focused. That's something you're trying to solve. There's another problem that I call time is an ocean, where you start the day and you just feel like, I got all day. So what if I spend a few minutes working on this thing or that thing? Like, it just feels like time is meaningless and you're in this infinite ocean of time to work on stuff. And using coming up with a system of thinking about this stuff beforehand, saying, I have this to do. Realistically, how much time do I think it will take? I mean, you could think in terms of hours, or you could think in terms of Pomodoro, which is kind of like a soft currency. I think 6 Pomodoros. That's how much time I think it's going to take. But it forces you to make that judgment of, okay, time is not infinite. I have this many Pomodoros to spend during the day. How many do I really want to spend on this thing? And it kind of brings a little bit of urgency and a little bit of intention to how much time am I spending on this thing. Another thing you keep mentioning is what I call the can't stop, won't stop state of mind, where
Do you actually call these things this stuff, or are you making this up on the spot?
I wrote these down during this week.
Okay.
Because one of the major premises of this podcast is that there are things that are really important that affect us all, and we don't talk about them because they're weird or they don't have good names. And that's just something I'm trying to work on. Is,
by the way, I think is why everyone knows about Pomodoro is because it's named after a little tomato,
right,
and it sounds catchy. If it was called like 25-5 time blocking experiment technique, then no one would talk about it. But it's called Pomodoro tomato thing, so we're talking about it. So yeah.
Marketing is if you called it the tomato technique, no one would be into it. Marketing is everything. I want that here. The Pomodoro technique, everyone knows it. Everyone is able to reason about it and try it. I want people to have ways of thinking about the actual problems that it's trying to solve. And I'm sorry that I'm not more clever with names, but there's goldfish brain. That's my name for not being able to get from diffuse mode into focus mode. There's time is an ocean. That's that feeling of, oh, time doesn't matter. I'll just do whatever. And you're not really able to think in a concrete terms about time. There's can't stop, won't stop, which you were kind of hinting at this. We act like getting really focused is the only worthy goal, where anything you're trying to do, you're trying to get focused. But that's very important. That's something we are trying to do. But getting focused has its drawbacks. Or not getting focused, but staying focused has its drawbacks. If you are focused on something for too long, you will, 1, develop fatigue, and 2, you will fall into the trap of fixation. This happens to me a lot, especially if I've been focused for too long on something intense, where I start to get fatigued, where I'm fixated. I can't get out of focus mode. The timer goes off and I don't stop. I can't stop, won't stop. I'm just fixated on it. And in fixated mode, you're unable to make good high-level decisions. You'll sit there and grind away at a problem that maybe isn't even the right approach to something. It's the total opposite of I can't get from diffuse mode into focus mode. It's I can't get out of focus mode. I can't see the big picture, make better decisions. And the problem with that, even beyond just already wasting time, is that it's freaking exhausting. If you get stuck in can't stop, won't stop mode, you burn yourself out. And our theme for this season is motivation. And we're going to spend many episodes trying to kind of chip away at the boulder of motivation. But to me, one of the most key parts of it, in terms of, motivation is you feeling good and feeling like you want to work on the things that you want to work on, even on a day-to-day basis. You need to be able to stay mentally healthy and feeling good over a long period of time. Maybe you can focus super hardcore for 6 hours. What does that do to you for the rest of the day or the rest of the week? For me at least, that burns me out, where I have a really hard time getting back into focus mode the next day, or I just don't want to do it anymore. There are side effects to just going super hard one day.
So on the subject of motivation, one of the biggest discouraging experiences that you can have is focusing for a really long time, trying your hardest, going all out on something, and then at the end of the day, or when you're totally burned out, you back up and look at it,
Yeah.
and it's all wrong.
Yeah.
That is so discouraging because no matter how hard you tried, it didn't matter. And a lot of that problem comes from not being able to think about your time and your focus in a very down to earth, realistic way. And Pomodoro can help with that a lot. And here, if you look, I don't know if you can see that real well. These are days, and for audio only, I'm just showing like, I don't know, days I've written out on paper of like all my Pomodoros listed, and then I have all of them checked off. And I've saved these little pieces of paper to represent days that have gone really, really well for me. Days that I've been able to do, I think, 12 to 16 Pomodoros in one day, where I felt like I was able to resist burning out, and I was able to focus on and get everything done that I wanted to get done through these 16 Pomodoros or whatever. And it's because I was very strict about taking breaks and being able to step back. And it's really hard to do. But constantly step back and see the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I tried to distill this into a single thought or single sentence this week. Just thinking about what is the goal? What am I trying to do day to day? Like, what do I want to happen during my work day? This is what I think it is. This is my objective. I want to be able to work hard and be very focused without burning out and with maintaining my ability to make good decisions. That's what I want from my day. And that's how I maintain motivation over the long period. If you violate any of those things, you've kind of gone into the wrong course. If you focus super hard, but you burn out, or like you said, you miss the sniper shot where you realize later that you were focused on the wrong thing, that sucks. And that can really mess you up for the longer period of time, the week or the month. So you have to kind of balance these different things of, you need to be able to get into focus mode, but you also need to be able to get out of it, and having that timer go off and say, okay, it doesn't really matter how you feel right now. You got to stop. You got to relax. To me, the ideal thing to do is go walk around, or, I mean, we're talking about diffuse mode like it's a way of thinking. It's also a literal thing that happens where if you take your eyes from being hyper focused on a specific point on, let's say, a computer screen, and then you go walk around where you start to see everything around you, that is actually a specific physiological thing that activates different circuits in your brain.
Okay, we could go on and on about the great, wonderful things about Pomodoro and how they've helped us, but it's not perfect. And a lot of people seem to misunderstand the whole thing. So what are, in the last 1 minute and 50 seconds, how can we cover some of the misconceptions and problems with Pomodoro, if there are?
Okay, so the biggest problem of the Pomodoro technique to me is that 25 minutes is totally arbitrary, and it obviously depends on what you're doing. If you're doing something extremely intense that takes extremely intense focus, you can't do that for 25 minutes. That'll completely fry you. Other things are way more relaxed, and you could do it for much longer, and 25 minutes is too short of a time. It totally depends on what you're doing. And you're trying to avoid those problems of fixation and burnout. And to me, it's better to think more carefully about, what am I doing? How do I recognize when those are happening? And what is an appropriate amount of time? Maybe it needs to be flexible. I don't know, but it's different for all different kinds of things. I don't like the rigidity of it.
One of my biggest problems, and I ran into this a lot this week, was that I would start a Pomodoro. 2 minutes later, my dogs come into the room, start barking. They need to go outside, so I have to take them out. Or just random little things would come up that I'd have to deal with. And so I don't know how flexible it is, or like, what is the answer? Do I turn it off? Do I keep it running?
Yeah.
What's the answer? So it's not as flexible as I wish it was.
To me, recognizing those specific problems is the most important thing, and having this tool is really helpful, and I like that. But I'm not religious about it. I mean, we were this week, but to me, recognizing, okay, I'm starting to head towards fixation. I'm going to do 10-minute chunks and then stop, or I need a longer break or whatever. Like, recognize what the actual problems are and figure out the best way to solve them.
Try it.